Hello and welcome back to Try Your Hand. I'm Brenda and today we're going to be making a crochet ribbed hat. Let's get started with the supplies. So in the kit that you have picked up, you will have these things. You'll have 100 grams of yarn, a crochet hook size J, a stitch marker, a tapestry needle, and that's it. Then the things that you'll need to provide for yourself are scissors and a tape measure. Now let's get started. Before we start on our hat, I want to make sure that you know how to do all the steps in the crochet process. Right now, I'm going to show you how to hold your yarn and your hook. So for the yarn, you are going to be holding the yarn in your non-dominant hand. So for me, that is my left hand. So there are many different ways to hold your yarn. This is simply one of them. So I make sure that the ball end of this piece of yarn that I'm holding is coming out of the bottom of my hand, so the palm end of my hand, and that the end of my yarn is then being held by my thumb and by my middle finger. So in order to be able to hold your yarn in this way, I take that end of the yarn and put it on my palm so that the end of the yarn is by my thumb. Then I grab the yarn with the 3 bottom fingers, wrap the yarn around my pointer finger, and then hold that end of the yarn with my thumb and middle finger. The 3 fingers, what those do is hold the tension of your yarn. That is important in keeping the size of your stitch consistent. There are 2 major ways to hold your hook in crochet. There is the pencil grip and then there is overhand. I hold my crochet hook in the pencil grip position. There's no better way or anything, it's just the way that I prefer. So I'll show you how to do that first. So the way that I hold it is with my thumb and my middle finger on that flat part of the hook, and then I just kind of gently rest my pointer finger on and then my ring finger there is just for extra help in holding on to loops that are on my hook. This is what the pencil grip looks like in action. So for the overhand grip, you just essentially grab the hook as if like you're grabbing a stick or something like that. On that flat part of the stick, you'll probably hold your thumb and then your pointer finger. The rest of your fingers are also then on the hook towards like the back of the hook. And this is what the overhand grip looks like in action. Now it's time to learn some of the basic stitches that we'll be using in this project. First thing that we're going to learn is how to make a slip knot. This is an important first step to make most projects in crochet. Now with your pointer finger, lift up that yarn that's there. You want to twist and put your thumb in, and then you'll want to grab onto the yarn that is coming from your pointer finger and then pull through that loop. That makes you your slip knot. And then here is a second look on how to make that slip knot. So for the chain stitch, you'll need to insert your hook into the slip knot that we just made. Then we will yarn over, which is wrapping your hook around the yarn coming from your non-dominant hand. Once we have that yarn over, we will then pull that yarn over through the loop that is already on our hook. And that is a chain stitch. So again, we'll yarn over and then we'll pull through our stitch. So yarn over and pull through. And that is your chain stitch. The next stitch is the single crochet. Other than the chain stitch, this is the most simple crochet stitch you will learn. So right off of this chain, what you'll do is you'll skip the first chain and then insert your hook into the next chain. From there, you'll yarn over and then pull through, so you have 2 loops on your hook. Then you'll yarn over again and pull through. That is a single crochet. So again, we're inserting our hook into the next stitch. We are yarning over and pulling through so that we have 2 loops on our hook. Then we will yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Inserting our hook. We are yarning over and yarning over again and pulling through. So once you're finished with that first row, you'll do your very last stitch on that last chain stitch. Then you will chain 1 and turn your work. Where you'll put your hook is that little hole that's right that I pointed out, and then you will single crochet as normal. So again, it's that little hole that my hook is going through. So when you do a second row, that's what you're looking for. So now we're going to learn how to do the half double crochet. We are going to yarn over and insert our hook into the next stitch there, and yarn over again and pull through. That leaves us with 3 loops on our hook. Then we'll yarn over and pull our hook through all 3 loops on our hook. So we'll yarn over, insert our hook into the next stitch, we'll yarn over again, leaving 3 loops. Then we will yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Again, we are yarning over, inserting our hook, yarning over and pulling through 3 loops. So now we're going to learn what in back loop only means. So it's not really so much a stitch so much as it is a place where you put your hook. So if we turn our work towards us so that that edge is facing us, we can see that the stitches make these little V's. Where we want to insert our hook is in that back loop of that V. So as you can see, I'm inserting my hook in that back V. And that's where you'll be placing your hook when you are crocheting in the back loop only. What this does is it makes that ridging that we need, and it makes our fabric a little stretchier than it would be with just putting our hook through where we normally would. So the last thing that you'll need to learn is just how to fasten off your work. So when you are done with a project, you will cut off your work from the ball of yarn. You usually want to leave a pretty, maybe a 6 or 7 inch tail. For this project, you'll need to leave a longer tail than that. You'll cut it, and then you'll with your hook, what you'll do is that you'll yarn over and pull through, but instead of keeping that loop on your hook, you're just going to pull all the way through until the end of the yarn goes through the loop, and then you'll just tighten that, and that is fastening off. Before we start making our hat, we're going to have to decide what kind of hat we want. So, do you want a hat that has a little fold over, or do you want the end of your hat to just end at the forehead? I have given you enough yarn for that fold over, and that's what this pattern here is for. So if you don't want that fold in the hat, the amount of chains that you'll be making in the beginning of your project is going to be different. So, and if that's the case, then you'll have to measure accordingly. So, if you don't want that fold over in your hat, you'll have to measure from the crown of your head all the way to where you want the hat to end on your forehead. So, when you are making your chains at the beginning of your project, instead of following the pattern that I have, you'll want to make as many chains that measure up to the measurement that you just took. So that measurement here on this balloon person that I have was 8 inches. So I would just crochet as many chains that equals 8 inches. The next measurement that we will be taking is the circumference of our head. So what that is going to tell us is how many rows we're going to be making when we're crocheting. You'll have to remember that we do want this hat to fit snugly on our heads, so you don't want to crochet the exact rows that equals the circumference. You want to go maybe like 1.5 inches or something less than that. So in my case, the circumference of the head of this balloon person that I have was about 26 inches. So what I'll do is I'll crochet as many rows up that equals maybe like 24 and a half. We are now finally starting our project. So the first thing that we're going to do is chain 41. So the example that I'm showing you here, just for the sake of time, is much shorter than what you are going to be making, but the process is still going to be the same. So we're chaining here 41. So for our next step, we're going to then start our first row. We are going to yarn over and insert our hook into the second chain from the hook, and then we will do 35 half double crochets all the way to the end, and that's if you're following the pattern. If you are not following your pattern and you are going with the measurement or the amount of chains that you measured out yourself, you will just want to half double crochet until you hit the last 5 stitches, and then you will want to do the next part of this pattern. So just make sure that you still have 5 chains left over and stop there. So now that you have 5 chains left over, you're going to single crochet in those last 5 chains. So you just insert your hook, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through again. Then you'll chain 1 and then turn your work for the next row. So for the second row, or step 3 here, we are going to then single crochet in the back loop only for the next 5 stitches. So again, we look for that back loop on our project, we insert our hook, and then we pull through making our single crochet, and we do that 5 times. So once we've done our 5 single crochets, we are going to then do our 35 half double crochets until the end of our row. So if you're following the pattern, it'll be 35 half double crochets in the back loop only. If you did not follow the pattern, then it's just half double crochets in the back loop only until you get to the end of your row. So one of the tips that I should mention here is that you'll always want to make sure that you count your stitches as you go, because you don't want any to accidentally put extra stitches in your work, or else it warps the size of your hat here. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm making sure that all of my stitches match up with the amount of chains that I made, and with the row before it. So once you finish the row, you just want to chain one and then turn your work for the next row. So step 4 is a lot like step 3, except it's flipped. So we are going to do 35 half double crochets in the back loop only, or you're doing half double crochets until you hit the last 5 stitches in your row. So when you've come up to the last 5 stitches, you are going to want to do the single crochet in the back loop only until the end. So that would be 5 stitches of the single crochet in the back loop only. And then of course when you're done with those 5, you will chain 1 and turn your work. So for the next rows, you will be repeating steps 4 and 5 until you get the length that you want. So you'll want to remember that the amount of rows that you're going to be making, you want it to fit about 1.5 inches less than the measurement that you have for the circumference of your head. If you make it any more than that, or you have it the exact length of the circumference of your head, it's going to be a little too big. The hat is made to stretch, which is why we have it ribbed. So once you have your hat at the amount of rows that you want it, we are now going to start to actually make it look like a hat. So you are going to want to fasten off your work. Make sure to leave a long tail, because we're going to be using that long tail to seam the sides of the hat together. So with that long tail, you're going to then thread the yarn through that yarn needle that we gave you. Then we're going to fold the hat in half, so we have the bottom of our work and then the top of our work are then right next to each other. If you look at the very edges of your work, you can kind of see that they kind of match up a little bit. So what you'll do is you'll sew those together by like the chain bumps and like each of the stitches from like the top of your work. So I will show you how I do that here. So you just take your needle and make sure that you grab both ends of your work, and then you just kind of continue doing that back and forth. So this is kind of called like a whip stitch, all the way down to the end of your work, and then you'll fasten off the end. So with that last loop, you just want to make a knot, and then you want to just cut the end of your work here. Just leave a little bit. So your hat will now look like a tube. And if you notice, there's one end where you have the single crochets that is a little like shorter, I guess, than the other end. That is the end that we're going to then scrunch to make the very top of our hat. So that's why we did the single crochets in the first place, was just to make it less bulky up by the crown of the head. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll take a different length of yarn, and we're going to then make a knot at one of the ends, and we're just going to weave our yarn needle through the very edge of our work by those single crochets. And we're going to do that all the way around that portion of the hat. Once we have gotten to the end where we started, we are going to take our yarn then, and we're going to pull, and it's going to scrunch that end together. So we're just going to pull as tight as we can, try not to break the yarn. And then once we've gotten it pretty tight, what we're going to do is we're just going to take our needle back and forth over that hole just to secure the bunching that we have there. And we'll do that a few times. So once we feel that it's secure, we're going to tie a couple of knots on the end there. And then we are going to just cut off any extra yarn. And then we are done with this portion of the hat. Then we're going to turn it inside out. And we have a perfectly cinched top of the hat. So now it's time for the finishing touches, which is weaving in the ends, which is like the bane of all crocheters everywhere. This is the part that is the least fun to do, but it is an important step. So we're just going to take those little ends and put it onto a needle, and then we're going to take our yarn needle and just kind of weave those ends into our work. Make sure that you don't do it too tight, or else it will be bunching. So just make sure that you kind of stretch out the area that you're weaving in. So you do that maybe like 3 or 4 different times, and then you just cut off the excess. And you do that again with the other tail, if there is another tail. After that, you are done. Your hat is now wearable. So I hope you guys had a lot of fun with this project. I know I did. If you are interested in our other Try Your Hand projects, you can sign up on our calendar. Links to those will be in the description down below. If you want to share your hat with us, you can do so. You can take a picture and show it to us through Facebook or Instagram, or you could email us the picture as well. Our next project for December is going to be a Winter Wonderland terrarium. So if you're interested in that, please sign up. All right, I hope to see you guys next time. Goodbye.